A quick Cycnoches repot. This one won't be involving any water. All of this and more coming up at the Orchid Hut. Welcome back to the Orchid Hut. My name is Dana, and today we are going to be repotting this orchid that is a sister, possibly a cousin, to one of my favorite types of orchids to grow, which are the Catasetum type orchids. This one is a Cycnoches, and it was added to my collection at the end of 2023, so maybe about like 2 months ago. And we no longer need this really long stake that it was shipped with, so I'm going to set that aside. We will likely be reusing this other stake, but let's have a look at the tag before we get much further so we can sort of refresh our memories here. This is species orchid chlorokylon, which was probably a sibling cross given the name, or the cultivar name, Giant Swan. So hopefully the camera can focus on that tag. If not, I will insert it as I'm editing the video, and I will also put a picture of the bloom. Now, if you remember that unpacking video at the end of last year, this orchid did have leaves, and it also had a bloom spike. Well, early on in my care, the leaves begin to yellow and drop, as would be expected when this orchid goes into dormancy for the winter. However, the unfortunate thing is that the bloom also blasted. Again, not unexpected given the stress that this orchid would have gone through during shipment and then, adapting to my growing environment. So the nice thing is that over the winter, by keeping this extremely dry, very, very dry. Now it was shipped to me, and the sphagnum was a little bit moist, and I did give it a trickle of water once or twice early on, but then I let it go completely dry. And the good news is that this bulb is still in really great shape. I mean, there's not anything about it that would indicate over the winter that it, was going to begin to turn soft or rot or do anything like that, which these orchids are more prone to do. This orchid is native to southern Mexico through Central America and then northern South America. They grow more so in the lowlands in bright shade, and they attach themselves to dead tree limbs and logs and things like that. So the nature of these orchids is, they have to grow fast, but then they can also die really fast because they have to move on and find another place to attach themselves in the wild. So when you're growing these in cultivation, it's really rare to see them with more than maybe like about 2 pseudobulbs at a time, because that's just not the growing habit of this orchid. So unlike Catasetums, which can have 3, 4, even 5 back bulbs on occasion, you usually won't find this orchid that way. So in this case, what we have is the tiny little seedling back bulb, and then we have this latest growth. So let's go ahead and get the stake off here, and as we get this in a new pot, we will be adding that back probably. And the trick here is, again, no water on this orchid until new growth begins to really have roots that are well developed. Okay, so you've already got a bit of a view of what has been inside this pot. Before we remove this sphagnum or do anything else, I am going to be doing this one a little bit differently than how I have repotted my Catasetums. Usually I'll have, say for example, a pot like this with no drainage holes at the bottom, and I will put holes about 1 inch upwards all the way around so that a reservoir of water can be maintained at the bottom. And if you'd like to go back and watch how I repotted a Catasetum using that method, I'll put a link in the upper right hand corner of the screen. I am going to be doing this one a little bit differently because it's what I have. This is a regular orchid pot, but I'm going to be placing it inside of another container which does not have drainage holes, so it will basically be the same sort of setup. When I water this orchid, there can be a reservoir of a ½ inch to an inch of water in the bottom of this container that the plastic pot will be sitting in, and that is very, very similar to creating a plastic pot with a reservoir at the bottom. All right, so I kind of, looked ahead of time, and this is definitely going up in pot size just a little bit. I had considered this, but if it does manage to hang on to more than one back bulb at a time, this pot would be rather small. So I decided against that one, and I decided to kind of go up in size. All right, so we're going to take a short little break here, and I'm going to come back with my sterilized clippers, and we will work out this sphagnum moss and get this in some fresh media for the upcoming growing season. Okay, be right back. Okay, so now, unlike my Catasetum orchids, which always have every single root dead when I take it out of the media from the growing season, this particular orchid seems to be a little bit different. Some of these roots very much still seem to be viable. They have a lot of substance to them. If they were to be introduced to any kind of moisture, you may see some color coming back into them. I'm not sure. I'm not going to do that because we still want to keep this orchid very dry until the upcoming growing season. And as I'm just pulling away a little bit of the outer sphagnum here, it really is not, what I would say is off. It's not like it's old sphagnum that is like super old or anything. Very, very sort of clean inside that little pot. So more than what I would say a total repot here, we're going to kind of do a bit of a slight repot along with just an up pot, which means I'm going to be taking off some of this sphagnum just on the outside to give it a bit of air, but I'm not going to be trying to pick out every little piece of sphagnum because I just don't think that there's a point to that. It's perfectly fine. In my growing environment, I really, can't think of anything that I grow in entirely sphagnum, especially outdoors where it is so hot and humid during the growing season. Sphagnum moss just does not, I'll just put 100% sphagnum moss does not work well for me, especially outdoors in the growing season. I could probably get away with it in the house, but then I would have to kind of treat that orchid differently as far as watering goes than some of my others. So I just don't ever plant anything in 100% sphagnum moss. So my plan for this before I pulled it out of the pot was to repot it with a combination of sphagnum and orchid bark. And now that I'm sort of seeing this, I think I will stick with that same idea here going forward for the up pot. I do think, along with frequent watering and the container that this will be sitting in that does not have any drainage holes, there will not be any reason at all to have to have complete sphagnum. This orchid as well, when you read about it, they almost tell you that it cannot be over-fertilized. It is an extremely hungry orchid during the growing season. Again, it grows very, very fast. It has, in nature, it has that dead tree limb to hang on to for a short period of time, and it has to grow and do its thing and then figure out you know, where to move on to from there. So we're not going to get too hung up on getting all of this out, just some of it. And it's interesting because now that I have sort of gotten my way to the center here, there is something, yes. Okay, so at the very center of this is some sponge, some brown sponge. So I'm going to try to work some of that out. I'm sure it was there to maintain moisture for the seedling bulb that was planted, but we are probably beyond really needing that. So I'm breaking it away. It's very sort of crumbly. So I'm just breaking some of that away from the center of the plant. And this sphagnum moss is coming away relatively easily without doing any damage to any of the roots that might still be viable. But again, not using any water to rinse it away, not doing anything drastic to get it all out. Okay, so that's actually looking pretty good. Okay, so let me take another little break here, and I'll get this mess cleaned up and we will put this in a new pot for the growing season. Okay, be right back. Okay, so before we continue, let's go ahead and cut away this bloom spike that blasted. I will be looking forward to hopefully another bloom next season. I'm gonna take away some of the dry sheath from this bulb. That's not any kind of must-do step, but it does help if, you know, water is splashing and you don't want it to collect next to the bulb, you know, in between that dry sheath and the bulb. I try not to splash water, but of course rain showers and whatnot can get that wet and water can settle in that place. As I'm looking around the very bottom of the bulb, I'm not seeing any indication of anything starting to swell yet or any indication that new growth has started. So, you know, we're working a little bit blind on that count. This is my sphagnum orchid bark mix that I chose for this repot, and I want to save some of the sphagnum to put at the top of the pot. So let me pull that out and set some of that aside and get some of the bark in here. Okay. Now I may have to pull some of that back out if this doesn't fit. We'll see. Yep, it's a little bit too much. Okay, that's much better. Okay. For whatever reason today, this paper towel is so slippery on the countertop. Don't usually have that issue. It must be because this orchid is so lightweight. There's nothing really holding it down. Okay, so I'm not packing in the bark, but I am pressing it down just a bit. You know, we will have to stake this because that root system is really, that, you know, older root system is really not enough to hold this top-heavy bulb in a new pot. Okay, let's go ahead and reuse this stake. Very nice metal stake here. So I have positioned this so that this tiny little seedling pseudobulb is against the edge of the pot, and wherever the new growth begins, it will have enough room to grow. And if I'm lucky, I could maybe even keep this in the same pot for more than a year. Now, this one does, as you saw from what I cut away, this one does send a bloom spike a little bit higher up on the bulb, unlike at least the Catasetums I have, which bloom from the base. So as I'm staking this, I'm a little bit aware of the fact that the soft tie here may be in the way of where the bloom wants to form, so I'm keeping it up a bit higher here on purpose. Okay, and then we are simply just going to tuck the rest of the sphagnum around the top of the pot. Dry until new growth has an opportunity to develop roots down into the pot. And then introduce water slowly, just like you would with the Catasetum. And a lot of people, again, you know, put slow release fertilizer inside Catasetum pots or inside pots for this type of orchid as well, but I don't do that because I don't feel like I have control over when the orchid is being fertilized and by how much, although this one probably can't be over fertilized. All right, so there we are for the new growing season. Hopefully that container wasn't in the way for that entire segment of the video. Okay, so we're staked in. We have some bark. We have some sphagnum at the top. We're going to be putting this in the pot, and this one will stay in under the grow lights for the duration until the new growth is well underway, and then it will go outside for the remainder of the growing season. Thank you all so much for watching. If you like this video or learned something new, please give it a thumbs up. The subscribe button is coming up in the bottom right hand corner of the screen, and don't forget the notifications bell to let you know when I've posted something new. Talk to you all next time.